Before he was ambassador here to the United States, he spent 4 years in the foreign ministry in Tashkent as first deputy minister and deputy minister. Um, he was also served as the director for the Institute for Strategic Studies in Tashkent under the President's office. He also served for several years on the National Security Council in Tashkent, including as deputy of the Security Council. So it's fair to say that Ambassador Vakhabov is extremely well versed in Uzbek foreign policy, Central Asia's relations around the world, and particularly with the United States. So, with no further ado, let me turn the floor over to you, sir.
Wonderful. Andy, thank you so much for convening this very timely discussion. It's great to be back in Washington, D.C. After almost 2 years passed since I returned to my home in 2023. So since then, I've been representing this International Institute for Central Asia, a government-funded research organization which is very much affiliated with the President's office, doing primarily applied researches with a primary focus on politics, security issues, trade investments, regional connectivity, climate change, plus water resources management issues as well. We are doing researches on history, cultural heritage, customs and traditions, and the religion the peoples of Central Asia are worshipping now. And beside that, IICA is in charge of all CFI+1 platforms, which means we are contributing to filling the agenda for these formats with some substance. And as you might be aware, over the last 20 years, the number of such platforms has grown up significantly. So nowadays, we are engaging with more than 40 countries, including 2 regional organizations, which are the European Union and the Gulf Cooperation Council. And just a few days ago, Samarkand hosted the first ever historic EU Central Asia Summit. And in less than 2 weeks, Samarkand will be hosting another second summit for GCC plus Central Asia. This is what we are doing at the International Institute for Central Asia at this moment. And I think it would be appropriate to say that this institute is the only research organization which might share its own insights on current dynamics in that part of the world. And over the past 8 years, Central Asia has made profound transformation, politically, economically, and diplomatically. So the changes we are witnessing are not only historic, they are robust and irreversible. And under my president's policy of openness and good neighborliness, Uzbekistan has prioritized resolving long-standing disputes and rebuilding trust with its immediate neighbors. And historic progress has been made in border demarcation, water resources coordination, and the reestablishment of people-to-people ties. So where there was once suspicion and isolation, today there is a strategic trust among all Central Asian nations. So borders have transformed from barriers into bridges. So one powerful example, which I have already shared with so many people I met over the last 3.5 days while staying in Washington, D.C., is the progress we made with Kyrgyzstan. Uzbeks and Kyrgyz citizens now cross the border with national IDs, which was unimaginable prior to 2016. And Andy, as a person who based in Bishkek for a long period of time, you are pretty well familiar with what I'm talking about. Now we are working on expand it with other regional countries. So in particular, the president has tasked the government to introduce this quite simplified regime for the cross-border with respect to the nationals of Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. Most recently, in Khujan, the presidents of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan signed a historic agreement finalizing the demarcation of our shared border junction. And this milestone resolved all remaining border-related issues among Central Asia states. So closing a complex chapter in our regional history and opening the door to deeper, I would say, integration among all Central Asian nations. Just a few points on the progress we made while engaging with our immediate neighbors. Just wanted to pick up one topic, which is related to regional economic integration and growth. So since 2016, as you might be aware, intra-regional trade has surged by 250%. And mutual investments have increased nearly sixfold. Beside that, the expansion of Central Asian enterprises within Uzbekistan, along with a tripling of Uzbek investments in neighboring countries, has been remarkable. Regional tourism, another area that the government in Uzbekistan has prioritized over the last 7 years, has almost doubled. Just one example I would like to share with you, which I experienced personally. Last year, I made a trip to Dushanbe. By plane, which is owned by the Tajikistan government-affiliated Samon Air. And this flight, direct flight from Tashkent to Dushanbe, took less than 40 minutes. And I'm still comparing this to my previous experience I've gone through in 2015 when I was serving in at the Foreign Ministry as a deputy minister who was in charge of all Central Asia. And I went then to Dushanbe as part of intergovernmental commission, which was responsible for delimitation and demarcation. And this trip to Dushanbe lasted almost 24 hours. I took off, so the plane took off in Tashkent, landed in Termez, then we crossed the border by this motorcade, accompanied by traffic police guys. So then we crossed the border, so another 2 hours up to Dushanbe. So in general, almost 24 hours. So, and then it was just unthinkable that this kind of direct flights could exist in our bilaterals. But due to strong political will of our leaders, we've been able to resume these direct flights for the first time since 1993, since the civil war in Tajikistan began. Nowadays, our nationals are exempted from any visa restrictions. These people are traveling back and forth on a daily basis. And by the way, last year in 2024, just another example which proves my word, is related to the number of foreign tourists coming from Tajikistan. So the Tajik nationals was almost 2.5 million travelers entered Uzbekistan in a time when the overall number, the total number of foreign tourists visited Uzbekistan last year was roughly about 6 million. So 2.5 of them are Tajiks. Number 2 country following Tajikistan are the nationals from Kyrgyzstan. What else? At last week's inaugural EU Central Asia Summit in Samarkand, so concrete deliverables were security and trade, connectivity, energy, and security. And key outcomes included the signing of the EU Central Asia Declaration of Intent on critical raw materials and the Global Gateway Investment Package, valued at $12 billion. And allocated across transport, raw materials, water, energy, climate, and digital infrastructure. And what's most important, this format remains the only mechanism which brings together all 27 member states of the European Union, and 3 of them are G7 members. It means a lot to the region of Central Asia, consisting of just 5 nations with almost 80 million people, who are now, thanks to this platform, are building these people-to-people ties with the nation, with Europe, inhabited by almost 500 million people. So the most tangible outcome I wanted to single out is the strategic partnership which these 2 regions were able to establish in Samarkand. Institutionalization of our regional dialogue. In 2025, Uzbekistan took a chairmanship at this so-called C5, also known as the consultative meetings of the heads of states. Very unique and the only platform for political dialogue, which was established back in 2017 at the initiative of President Mirziyoyev. So since then, 6 summits took place in the region. So the 7th presidential summit will take place later this year in Uzbekistan, particularly in Tashkent. For us, it's a time to take a look at what has been achieved over the last years, and of course, a time to prioritize our further steps. And in these terms, at the 2023 Dushanbe summit, a significant milestone was reached. The decision to establish a Council of National Coordinators, which is represented by senior foreign ministries officials, a mechanism, a council which is in charge of drafting the agenda for C5 itself. This was the first ever steps towards further much broader and deeper regional cooperation in Central Asia. Major step, I would say, towards further institutionalization cooperation. Beside that, last year in Astana, during the 6th summit, so our leaders adopted the concept for the development of regional cooperation, Central Asia 2040. Author was unimaginable just several years ago. Now we do have very clear vision. For the way the whole Central Asia should move on. a strategic vision to deepen integration in trade, energy transport, environment, digital connectivity, and cultural identity. And also it envisions institutionalizing the consultative meetings of Central Asian heads of states into a formal regional structure. So key priorities include enhancing inter-regional trade and industrial cooperation areas that the government of Uzbekistan has prioritized over other issues. Of course, developing trans-Euro-Asian transport corridors was a primary focus on the middle corridor, on the Uzbekistan-Kyrgyzstan-China railroad construction, and of course this Trans-Afghan railroad. And of course, jointly managing water and energy resources, coordinating climate and environmental policies, expanding digital connectivity, and fostering a shared Central Asian identity through education, culture, tourism, and public diplomacy. What else? Yeah, we continue to advocate for the swift establishment of the Economic Council of Central Asian States, a forward-looking institution designed to harmonize regional trade, investment, and development agendas. Yep. I have already mentioned these platforms for Central Asia Plus One. And one of them, which I would like to single out, is the Central Asia plus the United States dialogue, which celebrates its 10th anniversary this year. A dialogue which was established back in 2015 in Samarkand. So I'm also here to announce that later this year we'll be hosting the first ever Central Asia plus the United States Think Tanks Forum, which the IICA is going to organize together with other US-based research entities. I just want to take this opportunity to extend my invitation to all those who would like to join this event, which is scheduled for late October and early November. So we'll get back to you with some exact dates. And these slots have been advised by my American friends, given the fact that October is quite busy with IMF, World Bank, families gathering here in Washington, D.C. And of course, we would like to see you joining us prior to Thanksgiving holidays. What else? Yes, engagement with our external partners. As I said, unlike Japan and South Korea, others, the United States, Russia, China, now the European Union, even GCC, which was born just 2 years ago in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So these platforms are ahead of those countries, and I mean Japan and the Republic of Korea, which had been staying at the forefront of these platforms back in 2000s. And both of them never brought together the presence within these dialogues. And now, I believe they are still learning and closely monitoring what's currently happening in Central Asia. So Seoul is going to host the first ever presidential summit later this year. And this newly elected Japanese Prime Minister is eager to come to the region this coming fall for the first ever Central Asia plus Japan summit. Actually, the previous Japanese Prime Minister was supposed to join us in Astana, but due to those domestic affairs, so he actually canceled his trip to the region. But we're very much looking forward to this gathering in the region soon. Last point. Yeah, Afghanistan is a topic which I thoroughly discussed at the Central Asia program with Sebastian Peyrus, who warmly welcomed me and my team at the George Washington University. But nevertheless, We know well that Afghanistan is no longer the case for this administration, but Afghanistan remains a vitally important issue the Uzbekistan government is currently dealing with. And I'm here to share my thoughts during our Q&A session. Yep, this is the progress has been made over the last years, but what is most important, I believe, and might be quite interesting to all of you, is about challenges which remain and which we still face. And what should be done to address these challenges. And here, of course, I would like to share my country's approach. Despite this achievement, the full consolidation of resilient, integrated Central Asia remains a work in progress. So we face inherited and emerging challenges that demand shared responsibility and collective response. And among those challenges, I would like to underscore, developing regional cooperation mechanisms and institutions. As I said, a great deal of work has been done over the last years towards deeper regional cooperation, and I mentioned this Council of National Coordinators, I mentioned this roadmap for Central Asia 2040. I mentioned, I failed to mention, but I wanted to underscore the decision which was made in Dushanbe regarding the establishment of Secretariat for the C5. All these steps wouldn't have happened without support by every nation in the region of Central Asia. And of course, we are very much grateful to our neighbors in advancing more enhanced regional cooperation in Central Asia. But in the meantime, we're not imposing on others the way of our own thinking towards broader and deeper regional cooperation. And that's why we've committed to advancing institutional frameworks only as far and as fast as our neighbors are willing to do. And we are building consensus, not hegemony. So this is our quite clear, simple approach towards more united and prosperous Central Asia. Number two, is about forging a shared regional identity. So if cooperation is built only on interest, it can fade, right? But if it's rooted in identity, in shared culture, shared history, so definitely it can endure. And all 5 countries, in our understanding, are custodians of a unique Central Asian civilization. As we worship the same religion, as we follow the same traditions and customs, as we speak even the same language, which we comprehend with each other. And this common heritage, language, and culture must be rediscovered, honored, and translated into a unifying regional identity. So without such a foundation, our cooperation risks remaining transactional. And Uzbekistan believes in reviving a Central Asian civilizational identity rooted in our shared past and a common future. If I simplify this approach, we would like to position ourselves as Europeans do. No one says we came from Netherlands or we represent Ireland. We are Europeans. And of course, we would like to apply this kind of approach to our own region. We are from Central Asia. We are Central Asians. So this is a way of our thinking, the identity we are still exploring. Yeah. And the third point, our vision for the future. We're living through an era of profound uncertainty now. It's quite visible while staying in this town. And global power is shifting, definitely right. So technology is changing everything, and even conflicts rage on into many parts of the world. But there is an opportunity, and this opportunity for Central Asia to stand tall, to choose cooperation over competition, to embrace openness, resilience, and shared responsibility. And Uzbekistan is committed to this particular vision. And we know we can't do this alone. So the reason why we are leaning on our neighbors. And that's why we value partners, even here in Washington, in Brussels, in Tokyo, in Riyadh, who see us not as a frontier to be managed, but as a region to be invested in. So this is my message to all these attendees, and I'm here today to help you learn more about current dynamics in that part of the world, but I'm also here to learn more about this administration's approach toward the region of Central Asia and what we should do further as we've been enjoying over the last more than 30 years, the so-called bipartisan support. And this support, so I wouldn't say might be revised, but at least could be edited. And I want to explore these edits, these minor amendments, which might be introduced to the U.S. strategy on Central Asia, with less Afghanistan in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. That really was a tour d'horizon. Fascinating, really, the amount, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 and the 5 new independent states of Central Asia emerged, the idea of integration, not surprisingly, was not particularly enthusiastically viewed anywhere. I think naturally the focus was on asserting, your sort of newly in process nation-building efforts. So it's not surprising, I suppose, that that here we are 34 years later, and I think at the time, 34 years ago, there were a lot of questions whether these nations would actually be sustainable, and that question has been answered definitively with what has transpired. And then in the last 7 or 8 years, we've watched this integrative process really gather momentum in impressive ways. I guess maybe I'll ask the first question. I might put it back to you. What you're trying to learn from us is, the current administration's outlook on Central Asia. But what are 2 or 3 things in particular that you would like to see from the current administration to promote these efforts that you described that are taking place now? Besides, chill out on the tariffs.
The former ambassador, so to the United States, as an individual who presented his credentials to President Trump,
Yes.
then back in 2017,
That's right.
the year when my president made an official visit to Washington, D.C., and warmly welcomed by the U.S. president. And I still recall this time when we announced this new era of strategic partnership, which we've been enjoying over the last years. And in this regard, just wanted to acknowledge that Uzbekistan has been enjoying this bipartisan support for strategic partnership, which was established back in early 2000s, right after 9/11, which we established. And over the last years, we've been able to broaden our agenda, so covering politics, security issues, commerce, investments, regional connectivity, people-to-people ties, with a primary focus on humanitarian exchanges and etc. But this is changing. These approaches are changing, but the agenda remains solid, on which the Uzbekistan and the U.S. relations are built up. I'm staying in town as part of a broad Uzbekistan delegation led by Special Advisor to the President, former Foreign Minister Ablis Kamilov, who met with both the State Department and White House officials over the last 2.5 days. So the Foreign Minister is also in town, who met with Secretary Rubio yesterday, and the National Security Advisor as well. So the delegation came to the U.S. capital city just to acknowledge our partnership, so with your country, to make sure that we are on the same page on furthering our bilaterals and multilateral engagements, as I said, as we commemorate the 10th anniversary of Central Asia plus the United States platform. And in this regard, economic issues, and I mean trade and investments remain a priority issue in our agenda, so with this particular administration. Yes, you mentioned tariffs, which affects everyone, but paused, right, now for another 90 days.
Yes.
This makes us very hopeful, especially in terms of our objective to achieve joining the World Trade Organization. And the government is tasked to make this happen by 2026, which is very soon. And we're very pleased that bilateral negotiations with the United States over the Uzbekistan's membership to WTO completed last year. And at this moment, we've completed negotiations with more than 20 foreign countries. And in this regard, so the government has prioritized Uzbekistan's accession to the World Trade Organization over other regional organizations, so which proves our intent to join this family where almost 97% of the world trade is generated. So for us, it's an opportunity to offer our goods and services, and also it's an opportunity to bring so others to our own market, which is also expanding. Critical minerals, as you might be aware, remains another topic we are currently discussing with this administration. In this regard, I want to mention that we are ready to step forward as a strategic partner to the United States. And by 2024, Uzbekistan had exported 2.3 billion worth of critical minerals and metals. So for the country, with more than $100 billion of GDP, it's quite a significant amount. And 39% of which went to the European Union. Almost $1 billion worth in uranium, so the rest in copper, and of course molybdenum. And these figures show not only current performance but future potential, and Uzbekistan and its neighbors are ready to scale up, diversify and align our outputs with American industrial needs. And with appropriate investments and long-term partnerships, up to 40%, for instance, of the European Union's strategic raw material needs could be met from our region. So, and the reason why the geology minister, together with the trade minister, key members of the current cabinet in Uzbekistan, are accompanying the special advisor, Kamilov, and Mr. Ambassador joined those meetings at the White House and the State Department, where these topics have been discussed there. Beside that, Deputy Secretary Landa, who warmly welcomed the Uzbekistan delegation on Monday, also extended its gratitude to the Uzbekistan government for its leadership in countering illegal migration and counterterrorism efforts. So this might be another, and this not might be, this is another area of future cooperation for both Uzbekistan and the United States. With respect to Afghanistan, a topic which I consciously skipped in my remarks, given the fact that Afghanistan is no longer the case for this administration since this withdrawal took place in the region. But in the meantime, so my country could serve in terms of containing international terrorism threats which might be posed by Afghanistan. So just making sure that no one in Afghanistan threatens the U.S. interests in the region and globally. So, beside that, yes, regional connectivity remains a hot topic for our bilaterals, and I mean primarily Middle Corridor, as we are diversifying all transportation routes, as we've been affected by the disruption of this traditional northern route. The reason why we are looking at east, south, and west now. And obviously, all these options are at this moment are quite costly. And at this moment, our primary task to fulfill is just to make sure that our businesses and local entrepreneurs are enjoying these affordable duties and fees while transporting their goods through the Trans-Caspian corridor. So this might be key issues for, I would say, renewed agenda of the Uzbekistan, the United States relations.
Thank you. Thank you. That was excellent. I want to just take a moment to welcome American Ambassador Jonathan Hennick, our ambassador to Tashkent today, who is with us. Now you can just say no, Andy, but but it's not fair for me to presume anything here. But I was wondering whether you might want to make a few comments about how about the U.S.-Uzbekistan relationship and how the current negotiations are going.
Sure.
Thanks.
I think Ambassador Vakhabov, I think, described the overall situation very, very well. And I think the bipartisan support for our relationship with relationships in Central Asia, and particularly with Uzbekistan, continues to be strong. And we saw that, I think, very clearly this week with the reception that the delegation from Uzbekistan had at the White House, at the National Security Council, at the State Department. We elevated our, we've had a strategic partnership, I think, for a couple decades now, but we've, continued to elevate that partnership and strengthen it in a number of different ways. But in a tangible sense, I'd say, there's also been real progress in terms of security partnership, in terms of economic, the economic relationship, and I don't see that changing at all. I think I can see that continuing to go forward. But is there anything particular you want me to comment on?
Well, maybe I actually like to hear both of you comment on this. In November, the center published a report that I co-authored on the Kosh-Tepe Canal and Afghanistan, and I was wondering whether either of you or both of you had some perspective on how that project is transpiring and to what extent there are opportunities to, frankly, to engage the Taliban in encouraging them to build a better canal.
I'm going to punt that question to. We have no involvement, of course, in the canal, and it's not a subject that we've broached, with the Taliban. And it's probably too soon for me to comment on, our relationship, our policy towards Afghanistan and the new administration. But I know that Uzbekistan is very seized with this issue.
So frankly speaking, it's quite sensitive.
He's helped you out, huh?
Yeah, too much. Frankly speaking, it's quite sensitive issue for Uzbekistan-Afghanistan relations at this moment. But so far, I would say we've been able to handle it together. Yes, there are some remaining issues, but our approach towards the construction of this canal is quite clear. First and foremost, we would like to turn this kind of concern into an opportunity. So for instance, an opportunity for Uzbek farmers who actually might cross the border and do some agriculture, for instance, planting a cotton, which might create some jobs for Afghans, which might be later processed within the manufacturing facilities we could set up in northern part of Afghanistan. And these finished goods might be sold out to locals or delivered back to Uzbekistan so that we can export these goods to a wider market. And this is an opportunity as we are facing the water scarcity in the southern part of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. Another opportunity, not necessarily related to the construction of this canal. Just look what we've done last year. We secured natural gas reserves in northern part of Afghanistan amounting to almost $1 billion. This is another opportunity as we are diversifying our agenda towards Afghanistan. And I'm not mentioning the construction of this railroad, which certainly will be mutually beneficial, as Afghanistan might serve as a transit nation and enjoying having these fees and other types of duties coming to its budget, and of course addressing unemployment in the country. But again, back to the construction of this canal, we proceed from the understanding that these kind of concerns and challenges should be addressed only through diplomacy, only through dialogue. Yep, at this moment, Afghanistan is not a signatory party to those two UN conventions on the use of transboundary rivers resources. We can continue to urge Afghanistan to access these conventions on a multilateral basis, as we did in the past while engaging with Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. But then we came up with much better way, as we are currently constructing, at least agreed to construct together this Kambarata hydropower station among Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. On a bilateral basis, there might be another agreement which we can achieve together with Afghanistan on the use of the Amudarya River Basin resources. This is a way which might bring us to a win-win deal. This is a way, as I said, which should go through dialogue, diplomacy, and law, international law. But at this moment, we do what we do. And of course, we clearly understand that Afghanistan might claim for the resources of the Amudarya Rivers Basin, as we are all living in the same area. So, but in the meantime, of course, we're keeping in mind that more than 7 million people living in the region, I mean, in both Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, might be affected by the construction of this canal. So, but in the meantime, only peaceful means are in place, and the way how we are addressing other remaining challenges in Afghanistan together with these people in power.
Yes, Aladdin.
Yeah.
Aladdin Kamilov, also from the International Institute for Central Asia.
Thank you. So overall, Afghanistan is not just this issue for us; it's part of bigger picture. So for us, it's Afghanistan is part of bigger Uzbek vision to transform it from regional liability into regional connector. So all Central Asian countries are like landlocked countries. So through Afghanistan, we can get shortest access to sea. So there are lots of challenges, but at the same time, we remain quite optimistic regarding the future of Afghanistan and working with that. And we know from our own experience that isolation is not an option. So isolation might bring another wave of radicalization or other problems which might destabilize the region. As Ambassador mentioned, from our perspective, Afghanistan is also part of Central Asia. We see it differently. I know like most of people consider it part of South Asia. For us, it's part of Central Asia. Like we in our institute, we also study Afghanistan as part of Central Asia. Yeah, this is my.
Thank you.
I entirely agree. It is part of South Asia, and it is part of Central Asia. And I'm not just playing the wise rabbi role. That was really an excellent answer, A+ answer, and a very constructive approach, I think, to Afghanistan. It was one that Fred Starr and I wrote about with others 16 years ago in a report that was modestly entitled "The Key to Success in Afghanistan: A Modern Silk Road Strategy." But this sounds very much like that, and in that spirit. All right, enough from me. Marcia Olive, and then others. Put your hand, and okay, I got Mike. I got Gavin. Marcia, go ahead.
I am Marsha McGraw-Olive at Johns Hopkins SAIS faculty and a retired world banker. And I have this identity, I think, I like your point of identity, as an international civil servant. So let me speak from that platform to commend the progress you've made in terms of regional integration and to make two recommendations for how you deal with the administration on this. My first feeling, honestly, from what I understand and what I've been seeing in this administration is that I'm not sure I would dive into a critical minerals deal in a big way just because of the, frankly, uncertainties that might lead you to that. I wouldn't discourage you from investigating work with the National, Geological Survey to find a niche for the United States. But if you wanted to appeal to this heroic goal of Mr. Trump to contribute to something grand and paradigmatic and monumental, I would go from these points about energy and water. And as a world banker, we've been working on this for a very long time. In fact, I lived in Tajikistan when we did, and I led one of the consultations for the Ragun Dam, which all included Afghanistan. We always looked at the Amu Darya Basin, and we linked the water flows to the electricity flows. You may not know, but next year, they're finally going to put this regional electricity market into place. It's going to be funded by the World Bank and supported by it with the support of all the countries except Turkmenistan. So I would just give you two ideas. One, it would be to urge, and I'm saying this to State Department people, take a benign view of Afghanistan. Just keep your hands off of it. Let the region do what they think is best. That would include, for example, the Afghans have asked for lending from the World Bank to support the completion of CASA 1000. That's a great connector project. It's a stranded asset if you don't let it go through. Just look back. Don't block the World Bank from doing good things that can help you. Likewise, when you're looking at this regional electricity market, the bank is helping on Kambarata. They're doing Ragun. You've got to bring the water piece into it. You've got to bring the water piece into it. That makes really tough issues. I've talked to Central Asians a lot about this. I'm sorry if I'm giving a speech, but I'm going to come to the point that I really think you should make, is continue with these hard tasks. Get the Turkmen in on that regional spot market for electricity. This will help with all these blackouts that we keep hearing. This will make it easier for you to attract foreign direct investment because you can have an assured electricity supply. We talked about this yesterday. You're a net gas importer now. You have big, I mean, you got a lot of energy problems. But if you can get your hands around this energy water piece yourselves, I think if you could come up with some grand new step that Trump himself could be seen as helping, I think you've got a major change for the region. And that would partly be keeping, the Afghanistan piece has to be in it, but it's really a C5 question right now for this electricity market. And that's something within your hands. It's very practical. And if you need briefings on this, I'm sure the bank would help give them for you. But I think you are on a moment of a transition in your dialogue with the United States, and it can be one that could be extremely constructive. But congratulations. I guess I don't really have a question. Just what would you see would be the hold up to something like this? What could hold you back? What might not work? Where would you need help to make this dream come true? Because it's one I think we in the bank have had now for 10 years. What would help us help you?
Just wanted to reflect on critical minerals related issues. You mentioned a topic I tried to cover yesterday. In our perception, this should be a win-win deal. Yeah. It's just not about exploration work. It's not about sourcing from Uzbekistan, this kind of natural resources. It should be about transfer of technologies and expertise, which are lacking. So in Uzbekistan, in that part of the world. I exemplified what USGS did, you remember, in Uzbekistan. And by the way, this project launched when President Trump was in power. And this United States Geological Survey came up with its own pilot project for a definite geological site in Uzbekistan, which thoroughly explored, even using satellite technologies. And this project was fully funded by the State Department. And then what happened? So once this survey completed, so a foreign investor came and easily got this project. And of course, we would like to bring now at our own cost USGS with its own new knowledges and best expertise they actually might share with us while exploring other sites across the country. Sites which might be quite rich with critical minerals. And in this regard, we even stand ready to make payments for this kind of work. So this is a way how it might be mutually beneficial, very tangible, and result-oriented. But in the meantime, again, so the government I represent is very much focused on processing. So on producing value-added goods, which create jobs for us, for locals, not for anyone else coming from abroad. And this is our vision for any investment project we are currently implementing there. But with respect to energy and water, I greatly appreciate your insights and your kind advices. But you know what I realized while engaging with these people, with energy and water individuals, is we are making this huge strides towards broader regional cooperation, and this is happening so at the highest level. But when it comes to expert level, so there are a lot of challenges still remain, which should be addressed together. And unfortunately, I also realize that there's a kind of fear among the so-called expert community, who actually restrain themselves from any attempt which might hurt our regional accomplishments in Central Asia. So the reason why quite often they are just putting aside these kind of complicated issues and with intent to get back to it at some point in the future. But what we are thinking in Tashkent, so we actually can't and shouldn't ignore these issues. Otherwise, we'll.
They don't go away by themselves.
Yes, of course, and wouldn't like to pile them up so that later it might be addressed in a very difficult way. But in the meantime, it would be great if those international financial institutions will take into account even the concerns of those downstream nations. You remember, more than 10 years ago, the Uzbekistan government has been calling for the so-called environmental assessment, right? Which never been done. And economic assessment was another requirement, which hasn't been addressed yet. But in the meantime, we know that these huge infrastructure projects are still being implemented. But it matters. It matters for us, for the country, which is inhabited by 38 million people. And you can imagine, you know well the region. So more than 60% of our population are engaged in the ag industry. Right? And the agriculture itself is an industry where almost 25% of our GDP is generated. So it matters. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, and so let's everybody remember that concision is a virtue. And let me turn to Michael Vlahos. Then
Ambassador, I think there's no doubt that a Central Asian Union, were that to be achieved, would offer the five nations increased leverage for negotiation and the brokering of more partnerships. But there is another dimension, and that, of course, is that of a great power competition. And my interest is in your perspective on how that great power competition, as it is currently evolving, impinges on Uzbekistan in particular, but the five nations as a whole, and how you would view not only the security landscape, but options for Central Asia and Uzbekistan.
Excellent question.
Precisely. But give it a go.
I will try. I will try to do my best with this particular topic. But again, our approach, our foreign policy approach towards the so-called big powers, the whole region of Central Asia is currently being sandwiched. It's quite clear. There shouldn't be a competition. There should be a cooperation among them. And in these terms, we believe that only collaboration between those big powers and Central Asia itself around those shared values and priorities, so might work. But in the meantime, we're enjoying these C5+1 platforms. Every dialogue might have its own agenda, but what unites us, so we began to position as an independent player. So with our own agenda, which pursues the goal, quite ambitious, making sure that the region at some point in the future owns its own strategic autonomy while dealing with those big powers.
Yeah.
And at this moment we are heard and being heard. This recent summit, EU Central Asia Summit, actually proved what I'm trying to deliver to you. And besides, our region and the expansion of Central Asia Plus formats, as I said before, has deepened our partnerships with all those global powers. So ranging from Germany and the European Union, for instance, right? China, Japan, Korea, the Gulf countries I mentioned. And these platforms reflect our readiness to engage with the world on equal and pragmatic terms. This would be my answer to your question. But in the meantime, there are some specific issues which should be addressed as well, which I wanted to make this privately. Yes, please.
Quite a good answer. Okay, Gavin.
Well, I'll make this a follow-up.
Then Claire.
It's a bit of the same question. But, you know, the cooperation of the C5 started because of objective things and subjective things, as we used to say. One was a change in generations. You had new leaders who were more interested in cooperation. But another thing is it took place in a context of extreme opposition between the United States and Russia over Ukraine. In some ways, you could see it as an attempt to have the C5 be able to maintain some independence and not have to take a side. So I'll make this a short question, which is how do you think a potential rapprochement between Russia and the United States on issues like Ukraine, or an American recognition of Russia's complaints about globalization, which cede to Russia a bigger role in the region around it. How do you think that sort of a development of a relationship, the Putin-Trump relationship, for instance, could impact your game of cooperation between the C5?
Good question.
Interesting question.
Yeah, yeah. It's up to these two nations to address those global issues where both the United States and Russia are currently engaged. So from our own perspective, I can just reiterate what my president recently said, calling for peace talks, which actually your government, so it came up first. The process is still underway, but in the meantime, obviously this war cannot go on, right, endlessly. At some point in the future, those conflicting parties definitely will sit at the negotiating table. point that the government of Uzbekistan called for is about the achievement of ceasefire. So the rest part of quite complicated issues, of course, might be discussed further. How these very promising peace talks are currently affecting our platforms with both the United States and Russia. You know well, Central Asia, yes, position itself as a whole region, but it consists of very diverse nations with their own foreign policy approaches, with its own neutrality status, for instance, or with non-bloc status, which we've been enjoying over the last almost 15 years. But in the meantime, I believe you saw this final joint declaration, which was released right after EU Central Asia Summit ended in Samarkand. So for the first time, the European Union on the one hand and Central Asia on the other made it quite clear with respect to this, made it their approach quite clear with respect to this war in Ukraine. And beside that, the way how we are reflecting on this conflict, so it's quite visible while voting at the United Nations General Assembly sessions. So in this regard, again, as I said before, for too long, so major powers have viewed our region through the lens of this new great power or great power politics. And today those dynamics are intensifying. So for instance, China, through the Belt Road Initiative, aims to integrate its community of common destiny. But in the meantime, this One Belt, One Road initiative is echoing and even reflecting the needs of all Central Asian countries, the need to unlock the whole region of Central Asia. And of course, in these terms, we welcome these kind of initiatives. What else? At the same time, we firmly believe that even openness and multilateralism and inclusive cooperation, rather than rivalry, will create a conflict-free zone of growth, so innovation and opportunity. This is a way for which we are calling for while engaging with major powers. This would be my answer to your question.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming close to the finish. I'm not going to be able to include all of you that have expressed interest in asking a question. I'm going to call on three people who have had their hands up. Claire, yes, you in the red glasses, and Peter Sloskin there. And if any of you decide you want to abstain, that will not be unwelcome. But Claire, go ahead, please.
I'll be brief. So you talked about the significant outcomes of the recent EU Central Asia Summit that Uzbekistan hosted. And as you referenced, the GCC Summit is coming up. Given your, pardon the American sports metaphor, quarterbacking role of the C5 sort of platforms, I'd be grateful for any discussion you can provide about your ambitions for the GCC Summit, as well as the platform in the longer term, since you indicated there was specific kind of dynamism in that arrangement.
Okay, let's collect the two other questions, comments, then you can finish things up.
Hamida Kundayid, American University, and Your Excellency, thank you for your informative talk. The question is simple. Does Uzbekistan find BRICS useful?
Okay, BRICS. Okay. Peter.
I'm PSS came from the Stimson Center. I was struck by your reference to the EU as a model for integration. You said that Central Asia should be strategically autonomous. Europe may be one day, but certainly is not now. You said that Central Asia should have a common identity, and that in Europe, continental identity trumps national identity. You referenced the Dutch. Geert Wilders' party belies that proposition. The AfD is currently polling as the most popular party in Germany. So what are the limits of the EU as a model for integration, and are there other formats that are equally enticing or sort of point in the right direction in other ways?
Okay, thank you.
How
Well,
much time do I have?
about 30 seconds. Go ahead, go ahead. People have to go, people have to go.
So, actually, our vision for GCC plus Central Asia dialogue coincides with our vision for the rest platforms currently coexisting with each other at this moment. But this is going to be the second summit, which the region of Central Asia, so particularly Samarkand, is going to host. And in this regard, I just recall the initiatives which were put forward by my president at the first Jeddah summit 2 years ago. And then he actually came up with a wide range of issues. Number one, which comes to my mind, is a free trade zone agreement between these two regions. Number two is visa-free regime for two regions as well. Number three, GCC Central Asia Investment Council, which President Mirziyoyev put forward. And beside that, right after I returned to Tashkent, the ICA under my leadership will be hosting the first ever GCC Central Asia Think Tanks Forum. And our mission, and yes, 15 think tank leaders from the Gulf region have already confirmed their attendance. And of course, Central Asia expert community will be well represented as well by both private and public think tanks. A key task we would like to fulfill just to make sure that that this upcoming summit in Samarkand will be kicking off with a solid agenda, which we would like to fill with some substance, and of course ends up with some tangible outcomes and deliverables. Touching upon, again, as I said, trade investments, regional connectivity, as the state of Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia have already expressed their interest in funding the construction of this railroad through Afghanistan. And moreover, with these renewables-related projects currently implemented mostly by Saudi Arabia and UAE-based companies, and I mean Masdar and Aqua Power. So, and these nations' contribution to the region is actually challenging the Chinese investment presence in Central Asia. It's good for us while balancing trade partners across the regions. Limits of integration. EU with its Coal and Steel Association 70 years ago they came up with is a good example. But Brexit should be an exception, I believe. But nevertheless, EU is currently positioning itself as a full-fledged, regional organization with a sovereignty which with 27 member states shared with some supranational entity. So in these terms, at this moment, so this model cannot work in the region. But the best model we are currently learning and monitoring, and the model which might be applicable to the region is ASEAN.
Yeah.
So and again, as I said, we don't want to impose on our neighbors the way how they want to enhance regional cooperation. And at this moment, so we are very pleased to have engaged with all our neighbors at the presidential level, gathering on a regular basis for C5 summits. I'm happy for not covering BRICS.
Yet?
But as you might be aware, so the government has already expressed its willingness to cooperate within BRICS. Given the fact that most of those countries are also the member states to SCO, and there are also, of course, Russia and India, and at least Russia is there, which remains number 2 trade partner and number 2 investor in Uzbekistan, which matters. So the reason why we are positioning there mostly as an observer. And the reason why we actually joined the Eurasian Economic Union with our own observer status, just making sure that these new trade policies introduced within this organization are not affecting our commerce interests. This would be my answer.
Excellent answers. Before I thank the ambassador, I just want to make a little reclama, a little advertisement, that my colleague Greg Priddy and Elvira Adarkanova are going to be publishing very shortly a new report on the GCC and Central Asia for the Center for the National Interest. Javlon, this has been just a superb discussion. I feel very inspired. I never say this. To really ramp up our work on Central Asia here at the center. From what you have said today, there was so much substance, so many interesting things that are happening. I'm sure I speak for everybody in expressing my gratitude to you for sharing your insight and wisdom about what is transpiring. And we all wish you the very best back in Tashkent and look forward to your next visit here in Washington. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Really great. Really great.